Good morning, everyone. This is Chattin with CHAP. I'm your host, Ginger Wade, and I have our special guest today, Shannon Lehman. Did you say Lehman or Lehman?
Lehman.
Lehman. That's what I grew up knowing. So we're Shannon Lehman. She is a CHAP mentor, and she's going to share with us about IEPs. We're going to talk about IEPs, and I guess she told me it's ISPs in the homeschool world. So just to allay some fears or some concerns that you might be having about homeschooling children with an IEP. But before we get started on the topic, I want you to hear about Shannon herself. And so she's going to give us a little background. So tell us about yourself, Shannon.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Shannon Lehman. I am in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. I homeschooled 4 children, 23 years. I started with my first child in kindergarten. The rest of the kids, I did homeschool preschool as well. I did not graduate any of my children. For me and my husband, it was always important that our kids kind of transitioned away from us while they were still living in our home and had an experience in an educational environment away from us. So my children all graduated from a local public school. I love homeschooling. I love connecting with people. That's why I'm acting as a mentor, because I feel like I've collected a lot of information over the years. I'm back in my profession, which is counseling, and I'm currently completing my certification for school counseling and licensing to be a private counselor.
Cool. That's awesome. So if you didn't know Shannon, Denise Eversole, one of the other mentors, is a teacher of counselors at Liberty University.
At Liberty, yeah.
So yeah. So that's really great. Okay, so this is wonderful. So, and I know Bridget chatted with you, and she said you have such a wealth of experience. And for anyone out there who is looking for mentor help, I know Shannon is someone who is very willing to help in this particular topic. Like if you have a child who I guess as a struggling learner, you love helping and coaching people along that journey. So I just wanted to make our audience out there aware of that. And we're all out there on the CHAP webpage as mentors. If you're looking for support, you can look us up there. So we're going to talk about IEPs. Well, that's in public school. It's an individual education plan, and it's a what is it in homeschool? Individual
support plan.
Support plan.
ISP.
Okay. I was unaware of that because my experience has been talking with public school moms who are, fighting to get those IEPs for their kids. And so we talk about it in the terms of you have your child in school, they have an IEP, but you've decided you want to pull them out to homeschool. What do you do with that IEP? How do you work with that in homeschooling? But so we're just going to talk about things to try to help you see how IEPs and homeschooling go together and all these types of things. So we're going to jump into our list of questions. I have to get my handy dandy glasses out so I can see the tiny print that I printed out. Questions. All right. So my first question was, what does a family that has a special needs child or a child with an IEP, no, does not have an IEP, so it's a special needs child who has not been identified by the school district, need to do? So if you have a child with learning differences or you think they have struggles, they have struggles, what do they do? How do they go about getting a diagnosis, I guess? Or what is that? I guess it's a diagnosis.
Well, it would be considered a diagnosis. The school district that you reside within is required to provide an evaluation at no charge. You would request that through writing. So you would write that school district, you would identify that you're in the school district, that you have a child who you do believe has some sort of a delay, whether it's like a struggling learner or physical disability or whatever. And then they are required to do an evaluation. They are required to explain the evaluation to you and educate you on the evaluation means. So that would be where you could get a diagnosis if you wanted to work with public school. There are other inventories that can be, if you're a homeschool, an HSLDA member,
Yeah.
They do have some inventories that you can rent that will help you to kind of look at if there is a delay. and to kind of help you tap into those specific areas. Um, you could, if finances are not an issue, you could go privately with a licensed school psychologist,
Mhm.
a licensed clinical psychologist, and they could do evaluations for you. Some of the evaluations, of course, can be done with your primary care physician. So if you're actually looking for a label, that's the places to start.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I know people who have not wanted to go to the public school, even though they are required to do it for free, but the private prices, whoo, like they just can't do it. But it's good to know about the HSLDA resource.
Yeah,
I think they would try to do that for as affordable a price as possible because they're
they
really
do
trying to
have.
help folks out.
If you are a member of
Mhm.
HSLDA, they do have grants and some funding that are available to assist people with the cost of services.
Okay. Wow,
So
that's
that's an
really great
option
to know.
too. Yeah.
That's really great to know. So, but then, like, this is just kind of throwing this in on the side. What I've learned is that the public school may test your child as a homeschooler, but that doesn't mean they're required to give you services,
Right.
right?
That's correct.
They
Each
must.
district, each local district makes that determination themselves. And that really is, that's driven, this, this is what I believe. I believe that it's driven on a local basis by the needs that they're currently meeting with the public school students and what their staffing is.
Yeah. Okay.
So, some districts might be completely depleted with
Yeah.
staffing
Yeah.
and are struggling to meet the needs of the student who is
Yeah.
enrolled in public school. So
Hmm.
they might very immediately be like, you know, there's no way I can do this. Like we
Yeah.
just don't have the ability to do it.
Yeah.
Um, I think sometimes we tend to look at the more negative side of it and be judgmental of the school. And I'm currently a school-based counselor, so I work within a school. I'm not employed through the school, but I
Hmm.
work in the school, and I do see that. I recognize that that is a legitimate concern, and it's not necessarily always that my school district are just nasty, mean people.
Yeah. 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 Well, I know the need in the public school system is greater. It's
Yeah.
becoming greater every year. And
Mhm.
there's just not enough people to help all the children who are there that need help. So, yeah, I think that's very good. It's very good to keep our
Mhm.
attitudes in
Yes.
check about it.
Yes.
And it's not just that they don't like homeschoolers or something like
Mhm.
that. There's legitimate reasons for not
Yes.
being able to provide services once the testing is done. But they need to provide the testing if you want it.
Yes.
Uh, so moving on to the next question. So if you have a child with an IEP, uh, what do they need to do? It says, my question is, they have an IEP. What do they need to do and who can do the approval? Like
Mhm.
as homeschoolers, you want to work with an IEP, what do you do with that?
So, anybody who's homeschooling, whether you have a child who has a special needs or not, everybody by state law is required to notify their district by August 1st.
Mhm.
That is submitting the affidavit and submitting objectives that they have identified, educational objectives.
Mhm.
Um, I think you probably already have videos on that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And that information could be found on all sorts of websites, including CHAP,
Yeah.
documents that you could utilize for the affidavit.
Yep, absolutely.
Um,
It's
and
homeschoolpennsylvania.org for us. Homeschoolpennsylvania.org is where we have all that stuff.
there you go. And then, of course, as you go through the year, you need to keep records of, academic records. If you do have a child who is a struggling learner or a special needs child, any type of services that you're receiving for that child during the year, you want to keep a copy of that. So every homeschooling mother should get a big old binder
Mhm.
with divisions and dividers, and she should be putting all that in for, or he, or
Mhm.
whoever's doing it for you, like if you're doing like under a private tutor. But,
Mhm.
keep those records, which includes the records, which is verifying and tracking the needs that your child has or they're or a struggling learner. Evaluation and assessment by June 30th, testing for grades 3, 5, and 8. And then the additional component, if you have an IEP
Mhm.
and and it has been approved. So this, I think, is based on the understanding that your child has probably been in school, has been identified as having a special need, and has already had some sort of an IEP
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So we're moving forward based on that. So your
yeah.
child has been in school, they've been identified, they've had an IEP. You're choosing to homeschool at this point now.
Mm.
Then what you need is a program approval for that home education. So this would be a teacher who has a valid Pennsylvania certificate for special education, um, a licensed clinical psychologist or a certified psychologist. And this would be something that they would write up that is stating that the needs of that child are being met in addition to the academic needs. And then that gets submitted with the affidavit by August 1st.
Okay.
So that's the
Okay.
additional piece.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the only difference is having, like it's like the approval of the objectives is
Yes.
how I've always understood it.
Mhm.
And objectives, honestly, we've talked about this so many times, that objectives can be general. It does not have to be specific. We're going to grow in this year. We're going to work on this year. We're going to, and that, still, I mean, even for a child with an IEP, it can still be general
Well,
objectives. What do you think?
I think what it would be, like, let's say your child is receiving occupational services and speech
Uh,
therapy services.
uh,
So within that program approval, they're
mhm.
going to be acknowledging that those services are going to be continuing. And
Gotcha.
maybe they'll specify how frequently those services continue, or maybe they'll even specify who your services are with, but that need is identified. If it's maybe your child has like a physical disability and they have assistive devices that they're using, that would be identified.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
If it
Okay.
was like a medical condition and, because of their medical condition, they miss a lot of days of school, that would be identified, because all of those are the needs that were identified
Mm,
that had them receive the IEP. So if you're going to be bringing them out of school, then
mhm.
you want to make sure that those needs are being addressed. And
Gotcha.
that program approval is where that's taking place, that those special needs are being addressed beyond the academic requirements.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's really good to know.
Yep.
So,
Special teacher with the certificate for special ed, licensed
yeah.
clinical psychologist, certified school psychologist. That's
Okay.
that's the people who could do that for
You
you.
can say, okay. Very good.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's good to know. So, as we're thinking about IEPs, I know you had mentioned if you desire that label. So the third question is, what's the advantages and disadvantages of continuing or discontinuing? Do you want to keep the IEP or do you
Mhm.
not want to keep the IEP? What's the pros and cons there of
Yeah.
each?
Um, First of all, I am the type of person who meets people where they're at. So I believe that everybody kind of needs to search their heart and make that determination for themselves. Do I revoke this IEP with the public school, or do I keep this IEP in place? And that's a personal choice that I don't think there should be any judgment over.
Absolutely.
If somebody chooses to work with homeschool legal defense, typically their recommendation is that you would send a letter to the school district indicating that you're revoking public education, that you're going to be homeschooling your child. And then, in addition to that, there's another written documentation indicating that you're requesting that the IEP is terminated immediately.
Mm.
So, if you don't want any connection with the public school setting, you need to do those two pieces of written documentation. Now, let's say you're going to be homeschooling for a short window. I would not, and I don't think anybody would recommend that you revoke the IEP, because it is a very lengthy, time consuming process. So let's say you're going on a 6-month missions trip, your family, and
Mhm.
you plan to homeschool during that time, I would keep that in place, because when you come back, if your intention is that your child is going back into public school, you want that IEP in place so that as soon as they're re-enrolled in public education, that those services can pick up immediately.
Gotcha.
So that's if you're homeschooling in a short-term window.
Mhm.
And then if you're homeschooling in a long-term window, and that's just your intention and you're definitely doing that, you're not stopping that, then that's a personal choice and we need to respect it. If you remove that IEP, those labels that are attached to that, you'll lose them unless you get those in place with outside services somewhere. And the benefits of having a label in place are funding sources, accommodations for testing, and accommodations for college classes or technical school.
Mhm.
So if you step away from that label by revoking that IEP, unless you get that put in place through outside services and outside testing,
Yeah.
you're going to be losing that.
Gotcha. I see that. So honestly, it's just like everything else in homeschooling, right? You need to examine what your family's or your child's needs are,
Mhm.
and you need to do what is right for your child and your family. So it's not, there's no cut and dry, right? There's no black and white.
No.
We can't
Yep.
sit here and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. This is what the right thing is to do. Because again, with homeschooling, there's so much freedom,
Mhm.
um, that it can look different for
For
everybody.
every family.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's like
Yeah.
really something to be prayed over. And, what is it that we need to do, or what is it that our goals are as a family
Right.
and our home education?
Now, what I would add is, if you're a member of Homeschool Legal Defense, they do have consultants for special needs, and
Yes.
you could
Yes.
actually have a conversation with them, and you could really go through the nitty gritty of what your personal issue is, your personal dynamics within your family, your finances, and
Mhm.
things like that. And that special education consultant could make some recommendations for you. Um, the other thing that I think, if you search your heart and you decide, no, I want to cut all ties with the public education, including the IEP, then do it in a very organized manner. You don't have to rush out, and you would write that letter stating that I'm going to be homeschooling my child. But you don't have to rush to the next letter, which is stating I'm going to be terminating my IEP. And so what that allows you to do then is put the things in place that your child needs. And me personally, I'm very logical and organized. Me
Mhm.
personally, if I had a child with special needs in public school, and for whatever reason, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not happy with this. It's not working. And
Mhm.
I knew that I was moving towards homeschooling. I would already be putting those in place before I ever wrote that first letter stating I'm
Mhm.
going to be um, switching from public education to homeschooled education. Before I even did that letter, I would already have the services in place that my child
Gotcha.
needs.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
then you're already right. You're going right
Mhm.
from education within the school and services that the school's offering through the IEP, and you're transitioning right over to, okay, now we're homeschooling. These are our
Mhm.
academic goals. These are our special need goals, and services are already in place to make that transition.
Yeah. So it's maybe a little smoother to
Yeah.
be prepared ahead of time that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good thoughts. Good thoughts. Okay, so one of the homeschooling requirements for the state, and this is makes so many people nervous, is the testing requirement. So, in grades 3, 5, and 8, I say grades,
Mhm.
3, 5, and 8, we're supposed to do testing. So, for children who have an IEP, what accommodations can they have for testing? Like, I know there's accommodations out there. What can you request when you're doing that testing requirement?
So when you do the testing, it really is determined, the accommodations are determined by which test you choose to work with.
Gotcha.
So I always did the CAT test. I think it's California Achievement Test.
Yep. Hmm.
And I would get that through Christian Liberty, or I think it was Seton Testing Services. Now, I did some research, and what they offer is they have an online version of that test that's
Yes.
untimed.
Yes.
So that would, for a lot of children, meet the accommodations that that child needs. So you have a
Mhm.
child who's a struggling reader. It's not that they can't read, it's not that they can't comprehend, it's just that they're very slow. It takes them time to process. So this online version, which is untimed, is a perfect thing for them. The other thing with that CAT test is that, you don't have to follow like a very specific testing schedule.
Yeah.
There's like a leeway to that. So which test you were to choose to use should be based on the special needs of the child that you're working with. For example, the Iowa, which is on one of the approved tests for
Mhm.
homeschooling in Pennsylvania,
Yep.
they have a large print and they have a braille. So if you have a child who's legally blind and is using braille,
Mhm.
the Iowa would be a really super great option for you because
Yes.
they would provide that for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
The Stanford has accommodations, the Terra Nova has accommodations. So really what that homeschooling parent needs to do is look at, okay, these are the needs that my child has. These are
Yeah.
the accommodations that I believe my child needs. My child needs more time, or my child needs one-on-one, or my child needs to be on a computer, or my child needs large print. So really looking at what are the needs of your specific child, and then looking at those tests that are out there that are approved through the state of Pennsylvania, and then selecting based on that. So it's a little bit of research.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to go to the test and and write to that, contact them and say, hey, do you have this and do you have that?
However,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
if you're a member with HSLDA,
Mhm.
I would bet when you get to that point, prior to getting to that point where okay, we're moving into this world of testing, um, that those consultants are going to be able to direct you because that's what they're doing. They're
Yeah,
working with families who have children
all
with
the time.
special needs. So they're going to say, oh man, this is a great test for the needs that your child has. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's why they're there, right? They're in it
Yes.
every day. They know all the information for you already. So, yeah, if you don't want to call the testing people
Mhm.
yourself,
Yeah.
get it. I mean, if you're not a member with HSLDA, it's valuable. It's valuable, especially in this day and age. I think it's definitely a valuable group to be connected with. But yeah, their resources are tremendous, and they
Yes.
would know it. I mean, they know it. They're boom, like
Mhm.
they're in it all day, like you said, every
Now,
day.
they will, if you have a child with special needs or a struggling learner and you do tap into them, based on the literature that I've read through them, they are going to make a recommendation that you're not required to do it,
Yeah,
but they are going to make a recommendation that you as a family um, connect with your own consultant, that it's somebody who you meet 3 to 4 times a year. And what they're doing is they're documenting the progress that your child is making. They're
gotcha.
documenting, yeah, we're at speech services. This, we're making progress here. We're doing reading training for dyslexia. So they're looking at what's happening with your family and your child, and they're documenting it as you go along. You're not
Ah,
required to do that, but it is something that I know that the consultants, based on the literature that HSLDA
yeah,
has, that is a recommendation they would make to you as a family.
yeah. That's really
And
great.
I mean, we automatically go to where we're thinking money, 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 and it doesn't necessarily need to be that. Like if you look at the people within your world who are professionals and who meet those qualifications, they might do that for you because you're go to the same church, or they're your best friend's sister. They might give you a
Yeah.
discounted price. So networking is important.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely, definitely. And there could be people like you said like that who just want to minister to others.
Mhm.
And I like recently we've had a lot of people reach out to us here and say, I want to support the homeschool community. Like they have no connection to the homeschool community, but they see the value and they want to support it. So, I mean, it could be someone like that. They're not necessarily homeschooling, but they want to support those
Right.
who are doing it. So,
And
yeah,
on a side note, while we're talking about testing, because in our minds we go to grades 3, 5, and 8. That's kind
yeah,
of where we shoot.
yeah,
But let's say when we're talking about struggling learners and special needs children, we're talking about an entire continuum of needs. So, this is a global conversation that is definitely not going to attach each and every child. So let's say you have a child who, academically they're progressing, but everything is just difficult for them. And I'm going to use an anecdotal experience. My daughter was horrible in math. Uh, I have no idea. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, I have no idea how we got through that, but we did. And she went to college and she got math credits. Like we did it, but it was a struggle. I never had her evaluated. Years later, I stumbled into a conversation with a woman who was a special needs consultant and an evaluator. And I can't remember the term she used, but it's kind of like dyslexia within math. And I'm pretty convinced
Dyscalculia. Is it dyscalculia?
yes, that's what it is. So I am
Or
pretty
yeah.
convinced that this is something that my daughter and I were butting up against. Now, I never did anything about it, never evaluated. I always just said to her, "Hey, it's okay. Not everybody can be great at math. We're going to just keep trucking away." We would do math all year long, 365 days a year. Well, all year long we did
Yeah.
math.
Yeah, I got
Um,
it.
because if we took a break, any gains that we made, we would lose. So, I look back on this now and I think to myself, she struggled with her SATs. She had to take them like 4 or 5 times. What a pain in the doopy. Had I had her evaluated, had I had a label for her, there is possibly some kind of accommodation that they could have
Accommodation.
done for her as she was going through that SAT process to help her transition into college. Um, so it is important that we look at all of those things, not just grades 3, 5, and 8, but actually project ourselves into the future a little bit and
Mhm.
look at, where are my child's gifts? Which career path do I see them going? Because when we're thinking of testing, that's their future too. So
Yes.
sometimes that label will assist them, as we project into the future.
Yes, yes. And I did want to interject into here too with the testing thing is you do not have to test at third grade level. You test where your child is at.
Child is right.
Uh, it's
You can have a child chronologically who looks like they're eighth grade, but they're actually really performing academically at third grade. That's the test that you go with. You go with
yeah,
that third grade test.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's freedom in that. There's freedom in the
Yes.
law. Make sure you know what the
Mhm.
law means there. And we have that
Yep.
in our testing videos if you want to
Yep.
check that out there. Okay, so we're processing through this, we're working through with our children, the accommodations they need, we're helping them through. We get to the end of high school and we get to graduation. So are there diploma options, graduation options? Like what is
So
out there for special needs children?
when you sent me the questions, my my mind um, my mind went to, we think 12th grade, we think 18,
Yeah,
19,
yeah.
maybe for some kids 17, depending on their birth year and the time of the year when they were born. But in actuality, based on state law, a child who has special needs can actually be educated up to 22. It used to be up to age 21. So there could be a public school student who was still, based on his IEP, based on his academicals, her academicals, and their transitional plan, they could still be in school up to 21. Now,
Okay.
that changed in 2023. I guess there was a federal law that extended that to 2022, and Pennsylvania had to be sued by
Wow.
a family in order for Pennsylvania to get online with that federal law. So it is up to 22. So really, like, when your child meets the actual graduation requirements, 4 years of English, 3 years of math,
Hmm.
3 years science, 3 years social studies, your 2 years of arts and humanities,
Hmm.
part of that process, that meeting those academic requirements can be spread out over a period of time. So you don't necessarily have to be, in your mind thinking, oh my gosh, I have to do English, I have to do social studies. You don't have to be hitting all those core subjects. That can be spread out,
Get out.
which just by spreading it out will allow some grace to meet the needs of your child.
Mhm.
So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when we're thinking about earning a diploma and in graduating. You do have a longer window through the disability rights with Pennsylvania. You do have a longer window in place for that. Um, I think, if it was me in that situation, as soon as I knew that my child was like eighth grade and we're kind of transitioning into those high school requirements, I would be contacting organizations and really making sure that I understand what are my child's rights educationally, where that distance goes, and how can I space this out. Once again, that's where a consultant would be extremely
Very
valuable.
helpful. Yeah, absolutely.
But the
I always
actual,
encourage I encourage parents too is in the law, it's the parent who is saying it says a year, right? A year of English. It's the parent who's deciding what that is. It doesn't say when you complete the book, or it doesn't say when you've done X number of hours for a credit.
right,
That
right,
is the parent or the supervisor's job to determine what's appropriate for their child in that. And like you
and,
said, it
and
could take
yes,
longer time. It
yeah,
could be different amounts of curriculum or however it is that you're working through that, but that
mhm,
you know your child and what your child needs. So it is you as a parent. It's your parental right?
yep, yep.
It's your
And
responsibility. Yeah.
And that's through that relationship with your evaluator. When you look at the language of the law, it's talking about progress. Um, and
Yes.
and that is where that there's continued education with progress, and what progress means is unique to each child. So
Mhm.
we, by connecting with an evaluator that we really trust and respect, and they trust and respect us within our role as home educators, that we're working together going through that process of what it means to meet these math and science and social studies and arts and humanities. And yeah,
Yes, that is so. I've said that so many different times about the evaluator that it's measuring progress, not like, oh, you're 10 years old, so you do fifth grade work. It's progress looks very different for every child, and your portfolio just shows you were here at the beginning, you were here in the middle, you were here at the end, you're
yeah,
progressing, and that is all the evaluator is looking for, and that's for everybody. That's
yep.
not just
That's across the
children with,
board. Right.
yeah, it's across
Mhm.
the board. So that is
Yep.
very freeing, right?
Mhm.
Relief giving.
Yep.
So, one of the things that I was made aware of yesterday that I wanted to share on children who are, graduating, wanting to move forward into college. A friend of mine had a son who he dual enrolled early. So she knew about this during the high school years. But this is for anyone who's thinking they want to move into college but has accommodations like extended time on tests or work or things like that. She mentioned the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is a governmental agency. You can find them at www.dli.pa.gov. They are the Department of Labor and Industry. And what she did there is she took her child to be tested so he would have the label of his need. I think it was dyslexia. Moving into college, so he could have those accommodations as he went to college. So
Mhm.
if you have a child who's, I mean, her kids are brilliant. Her kids are brilliant. So they dual enrolled really early at college level courses. So she needed to know this in high school. Um, but if you have a child, finishing high school, wanting to go to college, but obviously the services end there once they graduate high school. When you're moving forward, you are going to have to go to the OVR office and have your child tested so that you can continue to receive those accommodations at the upper level learning. So it's just something to keep in your back pocket. It's
Mhm.
one of those things that you need to initiate. No one's going to come to you and say, "Hey, is your child interested in going to college? Maybe you need to go to the OVR office." Um, that's not. That's Do you have something to to add to
Well,
that?
yeah, I'll piggyback there for you. Based on the example that you provided, so your friend has a child who's extremely intelligent, but has dyslexia by having that label moving into those dual enrollment classes. So the benefits of dual enrolling, um, the cost of tuition, if you have a high school age child who's taking college level courses, the courses for that high school age child typically are not the same tuition that you're paying once your child hits
Yes, absolutely.
18 or 19. So that is something to keep in mind and to consider. The other thing, as we're talking about graduation and diploma, a Pennsylvania Department of Education state issued diploma can be issued if a child has 30 college level credits. So you're in this situation, your child's special needs is dyslexia, but your child is amazingly
Brilliant. Yeah.
intelligent, very organized, very capable of doing college level work, even though he's 15, 16, 17. If he completes or she completes 30 college level credits, that would be equivalent to probably 10 classes. Um, the Department of Education would issue a diploma to your child.
Wow, that's good to know. I didn't realize that either. That's wonderful.
It's so they, if you want to get a state issued diploma, it's passing the high school equivalency test, the 30 college level credits through dual enrollment, or you could get a state issued diploma. I guess maybe through like an umbrella program. I'm thinking like a Mason Dixon program.
Hmm.
I think the diploma that like a Mason Dixon umbrella is issuing is state issued. I'm not exactly sure on that third piece, like the
Yeah,
Mason
yeah.
Dixon piece. But within Pennsylvania, you can do a parent issued diploma. So,
Yes.
when
Yes.
you issue that diploma, let's say like let's go back to the scenario I used a little while ago where I said you're actually going to continue your child's academic and transitional plan maybe up to age 22. Um, Within that, maybe your child has already made connections and friendships with other homeschooled kids, and maybe there's going to be some kind of a diploma or a baccalaureate service or something like this. So you could issue they haven't met all of their academic requirements, but you could issue like a certificate of attendance so that they could walk through that service with their peers
Hmm.
and experience that with their peers, but knowing that on an individual level that they're not actually graduated yet, that they personally have a transitional plan or some more work that they need to put towards their
Hmm.
academic requirements before you as a parent can do that parent issued diploma within the
Yeah.
state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so to keep in mind with that, your child might take courses and be able to graduate because they have so many dual enrollment credits. But like you said, it's so valuable, like cheaper to do it as a high school
Mhm.
student. Maybe you don't want to graduate
Yep.
just yet, and you can keep doing it at the cheaper rate. It's
Mhm.
literally like a quarter of the price.
It is. It's
So,
amazing. I didn't do that with my kids
yeah,
for various reasons, but I look back on that and I'm like, wow, I should have researched that more. Because
yeah,
now I have young adults and we do have, the paths that my children have gone on do require college education. So,
mhm,
we have that when it's
yeah,
like, ugh, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, well, this has been really great and very educational. I hope it's been helpful to you out there who are listening to help you like get an idea of how the process of working with an IEP and the pros and cons. And there's a lot to think about, right? There's
There
a lot
are.
to think
Mhm.
about and pray over and discuss, as parents and discuss with your children if appropriate. Um, if say they're old enough to discuss with them what their goals are or that type of thing. But it's not a black and white, right? Just in
No,
so
it's
like so
not.
many things, so many of us want the black and white and to just
Mhm.
tell me what to do.
Yeah. And for some families, the whole financial piece really needs to be respected.
Yeah.
Um, and and maybe sometimes that pressure is there not to respect it. But I like on another anecdotal piece, I had a child with a speech delay, and you know, I, I could understand him. We didn't have any problems within our family, but as he continued to age and was around more people, I started to realize I was like, yeah, I think he needs speech therapy. So my first approach was to go to the public school, and they would have offered him speech services, but he had to be in school 25% of the day. So I was permitted to educate him 75%, and then 25% of the day he would have to be on in the school following their schedule. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I had, you know, 4 kids. They were all very active: Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, church,
Mhm.
sports. Like, I was like, yeah, that ain't happening. Um, so I looked into health insurance with our family. Well, that was going to be kind of taxing. So I think this is when somebody said to me about the CHIP program through Pennsylvania's,
Yes.
can't think of what the acronym stands for.
Hmm.
But at the time, I was like, oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to be part of a state insurance plan. And then I looked into it more, and then I was like, you know what? Now I'm definitely going to apply for this. So my son got all of his speech services through the CHIP plan, and it didn't cost me a thing. It didn't cost me
Wow.
anything. And I'm happy to say he no longer has a speech delay, and people can understand him now when he talks.
That's
So
wonderful.
yeah, so there's so much uniqueness to this, and networking is super
Networking.
important.
Yes. Yes.
Utilizing the organizations, utilizing CHAP, utilizing HSLDA, you tapping into whatever is available to you, and always planning ahead, like trying really hard to be a couple steps ahead of the game, so that when that next requirement or task has to be crossed,
Mhm.
you've already laid the groundwork for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, excellent. Well, thank you so much. I am so glad you came on. I'm
You're
I'm
welcome.
glad we were finally able to connect
Yeah.
and talk. This has been really good.
Yeah, we started this conversation in October, and it's taken us to February to be able to do it. So thank you for being patient with me and my
Oh,
schedule.
sure. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Well, you know what? The folks out there are worth getting it together, right? They need
Yes.
the support and they need the help. And I'm just so glad that you were willing to to lay things out, like clear the air maybe on
I,
some of
I
these
hope it
things.
I hope it was helpful. I mean, I'm not a professional, like, per se, that this is my expertise, but I have a lot of working knowledge within the world of
Experience.
education
Yeah.
through homeschooling, and then
Mhm.
also through being in a public school
The
providing therapy.
school.
So I
Yeah.
just tried to do some research and weave it all together and kind of take it all. I hope it was a blessing.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on
Okay.
the show.
You're welcome.
All right. So, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I hope this was helpful to you. It was certainly very educational for me, and it's good. It's good because then the more we know, the more we can help others. So, tune in to us next week. It'll probably be a Q&A day. So, if you have any questions you need answered, please write them in. I'd love to help you out with those, and we'll answer them on the show so that others can be helped also. So, enjoy this week with your children as you follow Christ in all of life, and may He bless you in your connections, your relationships that you're building with each other. All right, we'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.